It was an ordinary morning when the small copper-colored 2016 penny slipped through my fingers and rolled across the wooden table, catching the sunlight in a way that felt almost intentional. At first glance, it looked like any other coin-worn edges, a familiar face, nothing special. But something about it made me pause. What stories had it carried? Whose hands had held it before mine? Maybe it had once been part of a child's first savings jar, or exchanged during a quiet moment at a roadside shop, or even lost and found again in the most unexpected place. That tiny 2016 penny suddenly felt less like currency and more like a silent witness to countless untold journeys. And that's when I realized, what if this small, overlooked coin holds more mystery, more history, and more hidden value than we ever imagined? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover about this simple penny might completely change the way you see loose change forever. It started with something so small that most people wouldn't even notice it as simple 2016 penny, lying quietly among a handful of loose change, dull and ordinary under the soft glow of a fading afternoon. I remember picking it up absent-mindedly, expecting nothing more than a piece of copper worth almost nothing in today's world. But as it rested in my palm, something about it felt different. Maybe it was the way the light reflected off its worn surface, or the faint scratches that hinted at years of travel. Or perhaps it was just a strange feeling like this tiny coin had a story waiting to be told. Think about it for a second. How many hands has this one penny passed through? A tired shopkeeper counting the day's earnings, a child excitedly saving coins in a jar, a traveler paying for something small in a distant town, this little 2016 penny could have been a part of countless lives, moments and memories we'll never truly know. And yet, it's still here, still existing, still carrying those silent echoes of the past. What if this coin was dropped during an important moment? What if it was part of a wish, tossed into a fountain with hope? Or maybe it was simply forgotten in someone's pocket during a life-changing day. Suddenly, it didn't feel ordinary anymore. It felt like a time capsule, a quiet witness to years of human stories. And that's when a question hit me. What if there's more to this 2016 penny than just its face value? What if hidden within its metal is something rare, something collectors search for, something that could turn this worthless coin into something truly valuable? Most people overlook pennies, tossing them aside without a second thought, but what if that's a mistake? What if the very coin you ignore every day could actually be worth far more than you imagine? As I looked closer, turning it between my fingers, I realized this wasn't just about one coin, it was about perspective. The things we ignore, the small details we miss, the hidden value in everyday life. That 2016 penny became more than just currency. It became a symbol of how easily we overlook something meaningful, simply because it seems ordinary at first glance. And maybe, just maybe, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at a penny the same way again. It began in the quietest way possible. The kind of moment most people would forget before the day even ended. A faint metallic clink as a small, copper-colored 2016 penny slipped from my hand and rolled slowly across the surface of the table, spinning in a delicate circle before finally settling into stillness. There was nothing extraordinary about it at first glance. It wasn't shiny, it wasn't rare-looking, and it certainly didn't demand attention the way gold or silver might. In fact, it was the kind of coin people often ignore, leave behind, or toss aside without a second thought. But for some reason, I didn't look away. Something about that tiny piece of metal held my attention, almost as if it was asking to be noticed. As if it had been waiting for this exact moment to be seen, not as spare change, but as something more. I picked it up slowly, turning it between my fingers, watching how the soft light brushed across its worn surface, revealing faint scratches and marks that told a story far older than its simple appearance suggested. And that's when a strange thought crossed my mind. Where has this coin been? Who has held it before me? Because even though it was minted in 2016, just a few years ago, the journey it could have taken since then was endless. Maybe it had once rested in the pocket of someone celebrating a small victory, Or perhaps it had been part of a hurried exchange during a stressful day, passed from one stranger to another without either of them realizing the invisible thread connecting them through this single coin. Maybe it had been dropped on a sidewalk during a rainy evening, left behind as people rushed past, unnoticed until someone else picked it up, continuing its silent journey. The more I thought about it, the more that ordinary 2016 penny began to feel like a witness, a quiet observer of countless human moments, each one leaving an invisible imprint on its surface. It could have been part of a child's first savings jar, each coin added with excitement and dreams of buying something special. It might have been exchanged in a small shop in a distant town, passed across a counter along with a smile or a simple thank you. It could have even been carried across cities, across countries, traveling farther than most people ever imagine a single coin could go. And yet here it was, resting in my hand, as if all those unknown stories had led it right here, right now. But then another thought crept in, deeper and more intriguing. What if this penny wasn't just a silent carrier of stories? What if it held something more, something hidden beneath its ordinary appearance? Because in a world where people often overlook the smallest things, it's easy to forget that sometimes those very things can hold unexpected value. There are coins out there, pennies, just like this one that collectors search for. Coins with tiny variations, rare errors, or unique details that turn something seemingly worthless into something incredibly valuable. And what if this 2016 penny was one of them? What if, without even realizing it, I was holding something rare? The idea seemed almost unbelievable, and yet it made perfect sense. After all, history has shown us time and time again that value isn't always obvious at first glance. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. I leaned in, examining the coin more carefully, noticing the fine details the face stamped onto it. The year 2016 etched clearly, the subtle imperfections that made it unique. Each tiny mark felt like a clue, like a piece of a puzzle I didn't yet understand. And suddenly, this wasn't just about a coin anymore. It was about discovery. It was about curiosity. It was about the possibility that something so small, so easily ignored, could hold a story or even a secret worth uncovering. Think about how many times you've walked past a penny on the ground without picking it up, assuming it wasn't worth your time. What if one of those coins was special? What if one of those moments was a missed opportunity? That realization changed everything for me. Because now, this 2016 penny wasn't just a piece of currency, it was a reminder. A reminder that the world is full of hidden details, overlooked treasures, and stories waiting to be discovered by those who are willing to pay attention. As I held it there, feeling its slight weight in my palm, I couldn't help but wonder how many other people had held it before me and felt nothing at all. How many had seen it as just another coin, something to spend, something to forget. And yet here I was, unable to look at it the same way ever again. Because once you start to see the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary, you can't unsee it. That simple 2016 penny had opened a door, a way of thinking, a way of seeing the world differently. It made me realize that value isn't always about price. Sometimes it's about perspective. Sometimes it's about the stories we don't see, the journeys we don't know, and the possibilities we haven't yet imagined. And maybe, just maybe, this tiny coin was never meant to be ordinary at all. Maybe it was meant to be found, to be noticed, to spark a question that leads to something bigger. Because what if this is just the beginning? What if this small, unassuming 2016 penny is the key to discovering something far more fascinating than we ever expected? Something that could change the way you see every coin, every moment, every overlooked detail in your life. So before you dismiss it, before you scroll away or lose interest, take a second look, because the story of this penny might just surprise you more than you think. Asterisk. And just when it felt like the mystery of that 2016 penny had already unfolded as much as it could, something inside me refused to let the moment end there, as if the coin itself was quietly insisting that its story was far from over, that everything I had thought so far was only the surface of something much deeper, something waiting patiently to be uncovered if I was willing to look beyond what was obvious. I tightened my grip around it slightly, feeling the cool metal press against my skin, grounding me in the present while my thoughts drifted further into possibilities that seemed almost endless, each one more intriguing than the last. What if this coin had passed through moments of history I would never know? Not grand, world-changing events. The kind of personal histories that shape people's lives in ways that never make headlines a final purchase. Before someone moved away from a place they once called home. A small transaction during a day that would later become unforgettable for reasons no one could have predicted. Or even something as simple as being handed over during a quiet conversation that meant more than either person realized at the time. The idea that this tiny object could have been present during so many unseen, unrecorded moments made it feel almost alive in a strange way. Like it carried fragments of human experience within it, invisible yet undeniably real. And the more I thought about it, the more I began to realize that this wasn't just about imagining stories anymore. It was about understanding how deeply connected everything in our world truly is, even through something as small as a single penny. Because every object we touch, every item we pass along, it becomes part of a chain of moments that continues long after we've forgotten about it. That 2016 penny had outlived countless small decisions, countless brief encounters, and yet it remained unchanged in its form, but forever changed by its journey. And then another thought emerged, one that shifted the tone of everything in a subtle but powerful way. What if this coin had been lost at some point? Truly lost, separated from its path, only to be found again by chance. The idea of it lying unnoticed somewhere a street corner, a crack in the pavement, the bottom of a bag waiting for someone to notice it. To pick it up and unknowingly continue its journey, added a sense of quiet resilience to its story. It wasn't just traveling, it was surviving, persisting, continuing forward no matter how many times it might have been forgotten. And in that realization, the penny became something more than a symbol of overlooked value. It became a symbol of endurance, of the way even the smallest things continue moving through time despite being ignored, dismissed, or left behind. I found myself holding it more carefully now, almost respectfully, as if acknowledging that it had earned more attention than it was usually given. And yet, even as I stood there, caught in this strange moment of reflection, a new layer of curiosity began to take shape, one that wasn't just about where the coin had been, but about what it could still become. Because the journey of this penny wasn't over. It was still moving, still part of the world, still capable of becoming part of new stories, new moments, new memories. At some point, I would let it go, spend it, lose it, pass it on, and when that happened, its story would continue without me, becoming part of someone else's life in a way I would never witness. That thought carried a strange mix of wonder and humility, a reminder that we are all part of something larger than ourselves, even in the smallest, most unexpected ways. And then, almost instinctively, I began to imagine the future of this coin, the paths it might take from this moment forward. Maybe it would end up in the hands of someone who truly needed it. Even if just as part of a small purchase that made their day a little easier. Maybe it would be dropped again, beginning another cycle of being lost and found, continuing its quiet journey through the world. Or maybe, just maybe, it would eventually find its way into the hands of someone who recognized something special about it. Someone who saw beyond its ordinary appearance and discovered a hidden detail, a rare feature, something that transformed it from a simple penny into something extraordinary. The possibility lingered, subtle but powerful, adding a sense of anticipation to everything I had already been thinking. Because the truth is, we never really know the full story of the things we encounter. We see only a fragment, a single moment, in a much larger timeline, and yet we often assume that what we see is all there is. But this penny had already proven otherwise. It had shown me that even the smallest object can carry a depth of meaning far beyond what we expect, if only we're willing to pause, to question, to imagine. And as I stood there, still holding that 2016 penny, I realized that the real story wasn't just about the coin at all. It was about awareness. It was about learning to see the world differently, to notice what others overlook, to find significance in the details we usually ignore. Because once you start doing that, everything changes. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The unnoticed becomes meaningful. And even something as small as a single penny can become the beginning of a story you never saw coming. And maybe that's the most powerful part of all, not what the coin has been. Not even what it might be worth, but what it teaches us in this moment. Right now, that there is always more beneath the surface. Always another layer waiting to be discovered. Always a story hidden in plain sight. Just waiting for someone to stop, look closer, and finally see it asterisk, and as the weight of everything I had realized settled quietly within me. I looked down at the 2016 penny one last time, no longer seeing it as a simple piece of copper, but as something far greater, something that had carried stories, survived time, and revealed a truth I hadn't expected to find in something so small. The room felt different now, quieter, almost as if the world itself had paused to acknowledge this moment. This strange connection between a person and an object so often ignored. I turned the coin slowly between my fingers, watching how even the faintest light now seemed to treat it differently, as though it had transformed not physically but in meaning. And then, almost as if guided by instinct, I decided to look closer than ever before, examining every detail with absolute focus, searching not just with my eyes, but with a sense of purpose that hadn't existed before this moment. That was when I noticed it, a tiny, nearly invisible detail. Something so subtle that it could easily be missed by anyone who wasn't truly paying attention. A slight variation, a mark, an imperfection, or perhaps perfection in disguise. My breath slowed. My thoughts sharpened, because in that instant, a realization began to form. This wasn't just any 2016 penny. This was something rare, something extraordinary, something that collectors search years to find and often never do. The kind of coin people talk about in hushed excitement, the kind that turns ordinary moments into unforgettable ones. And suddenly, everything changed. The stories, the journey, the quiet curiosity, it all led to this single point, this single discovery. What had once been worth almost nothing, dismissed by the world as insignificant, now held a value beyond imagination. Not just a few dollars, not just hundreds, but potentially millions. The idea felt unreal, almost impossible, and yet it was right there in my hand, undeniable and quietly powerful. A 2016 penny something people overlook every day, now transformed into a symbol of hidden fortune, of the extraordinary waiting beneath the surface of the ordinary. And in that moment, I understood something deeper than value itself. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the lesson, the realization that the world is filled with unnoticed opportunities, hidden treasures, and silent stories that reveal themselves only to those who are willing to slow down, to look closer, to question what everyone else accepts without thought. Because this penny had always been the same. The difference wasn't in the coin, it was in the attention given to it. And that is where its true power lies. As I closed my hand around it for the final time, I felt a sense of completion, as though the journey had reached its natural end, not with noise or celebration, but with quiet understanding. The kind that stays with you long after the moment has passed. And somewhere deep within that stillness, one final thought remained. Simple yet profound. If something as small as a penny can hold a story worth millions, then what else in this world have we been overlooking? What other treasures, what other moments, what other possibilities are waiting, unnoticed, for someone to finally see them? Because in the end, this was never just the story of a coin. It was the story of perspective, of curiosity, of discovering that even the smallest things can carry unimaginable value, not just in wealth, but in meaning. And as that realization settled into silence, the 2016 penny rested once more, no longer ordinary, no longer ignored, but forever changed, just as I was leaving behind a story that began with something small and ended with something truly priceless. Asterisk for more videos, subscribe to our channel, Secret Coin TV.